You are listening to the Real Estate Growth Hackers Show.
So Richard, welcome to the
Hello.
to the show with us.
First time I've been on live at Real Estate Growth Hackers.
That's true. So a little bit about Richard for you guys who don't know. Richard and I actually do Real Estate Growth Hackers together. I'm kind of the face of things and quite a bit of the real estate specific expertise, let's say. But Richard and I have been in business together for how long has it been, Richard? The past 10 years
2007,
or so? Yeah. So we've been in business together for a while, and Richard
actually,
and I shared
the 27th is our 10-year anniversary for business together. It was August 27th,
nice.
2007.
Nice. So yeah, exciting stuff. But yeah, Richard and I have been in business together for quite a long time. So we actually do the Real Estate Growth Hackers stuff together. We do a couple other things together as well. Richard is just very often behind the scenes and not out in front. So he's not as well known in that brand as he is in other places where we do business together. But he's got a great expertise when it comes to online marketing, direct response marketing, taking an expertise and turning it into great content. So we're excited to be able to bring you into this one to join the conversation with me, Richard.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of the mastermind behind the structure of the content that people are getting from you.
Exactly. And so yeah, so a lot of like our business automations, a lot of our webinar technology, a lot of everything that actually makes everything work, Richard is behind. And one of the ways that Richard and I work really well together is we actually hone each other's content really well too. So if either one of us is being confusing or whatnot, we tend to be able to help clarify the other person. So anyway, so that's who Richard
going
is.
From Zach to me though, I tend to be the more confusing one.
Well, hey, sometimes it works that way. But anyway, so on today's episode though, Richard, and I don't know if you actually heard this while I started this live, because I think you were still hopping in. But what I'm going to be talking about and what I'm going to bring you into the conversation on is how people can be readily generating content in the real estate space that will attract buyers and sellers that people will actually like want, right? Because most people don't want to be hearing about real estate information and how the market's doing, all that kind of stuff day after day. You can't follow up with somebody as often about just general real estate information and top mortgage tips and all that kind of stuff, because unless somebody is actively in the market right now for a real estate transaction, they don't care about that information, right? So this is about the kind of content and how to easily produce it and all that kind of stuff that people can be producing that other people will actually enjoy consuming in order to have a way to follow up with the people that maybe you've done business with in the past. Maybe you don't know like what's going on with them anymore. Maybe you generated the lead like a couple years ago, but it's been a while since you've been able to talk to them. So these kinds of people, that's who this content's for. So does that make sense to you, Richard? Is about what we're talking about?
And it's one of my favorite things that you talk about in the real estate space, because I think it's really, really powerful. And I don't think a lot of people, particularly in the real estate space, know how you can go ahead and actually like keep a conversation going over a long term, so that you're just constantly in that person's mind in a positive way,
right,
without pissing them off and getting them to leave your list or something like that. And there are some really cool ways that you talk about doing that. And I think the reason it's so powerful is because like one of the stats everyone knows in real estate is people buy and move every 3 to 7 years.
3 to 5. Yep.
3 to 5 years. So
yep. If
they're not going to buy and sell now, they're going to. Right. If you can figure out how to follow up with them over the long term, you'll be the person they'll remember.
Exactly.
So
exactly. You don't want to be the person for 3 to 5 years though that's just constantly in the back of their mind saying, in their email inbox saying, hey, here's what's going on with mortgages, and hey, here's here's a new property that I have, right? Because they don't care, right? If they're not in the market for it right now, they don't care about the real estate specific stuff. So let's talk a bit about what that looks like. So in this episode, what I plan to cover the actual content. So what people could be talking about that is relevant, sort of year round, any day, anytime. I plan to talk about that. And I plan to talk about easy ways to produce it too. because I know a lot of people would have a really hard time sitting down and finding the time to write these things out, or to go through the process to actually do that. So that's what we're planning on covering. So in terms of, let's start with the content itself. So we just covered a little bit about why this content matters, right? If you're not producing the right kind of content, people don't care to listen to it. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of what that content is, though, one of the things that I really like as a way for people to produce this content is, real estate agents are very well known as being people who know the market itself, right? Who know what's going on with the real estate market, all that kind of thing. But one other thing that real estate agents are often already really good at, and if they aren't currently, it's really easy to get good at, is knowing what it's like to live in the city that you live in, what it's like to live in your geographic area. And this is the kind of content that's actually year-round, no matter what, is very worthwhile information that people will constantly be interested in. So one of the easiest ways for people to produce this kind of content is to think through, somebody asked you, hey, I'm brand new to this city. Where's the best place for me to get a quick bite to eat? Right? Like where's a great place that maybe I can't find somewhere else, or that is a nice local place that does a really good job of putting together a meal locally, right? And chances are, if you're a real estate agent who's lived in your area for a while, you will have an opinion on this, right? You'll have a recommendation. But that's the kind of content that you can actually pretty consistently put out and answer that question in different ways to be able to, put out information that's interesting to these people, because it'll be interesting to anybody who's potentially looking to buy. It'll be interesting to anybody who owns a home, because hey, they live there, right? They want to know the great place and what's great about them. So yeah, that type of content works really well. What kind of thoughts do you have on that strategy?
I have two thoughts on that. One is just the marketing terminology and the psychology behind it. Right. In marketing circles, we call that providing the ownership experience, right? Because if you're trying to sell something, people are looking to buy in the area, being able to provide an ownership experience beforehand is that perspective of, I've been here, I know this place, and I can pass that perspective and share it with you. It's one of the most powerful aspects of sales psychology there is. And it seems really dumb almost that just saying, when someone comes in and says, hey, what restaurant should I check out? And you can give them a good positive recommendation for one, you immediately go up the scale in their minds of, people who know the area.
Absolutely.
And my second thought on that is just a anecdote from my life. I don't know if our audience knows, but I've been traveling in an RV. That's where I'm at now. I'm in my little bedroom office here in my RV.
Are you on your computer currently, or are you on your phone? I was just wondering, how easy is it for you to show people around? Because Richard right now is literally sitting in the back. I'm in the back of his
literally in an
RV.
Yeah, in a little RV. And we've been traveling, and every time we go into a new city, we're generally, we're going into Walmart's, or we're going into, the auto parts store, because I got an old RV and I got to replace shit all the time. Going into local restaurants and stuff. And the question that I always ask people when I meet them is, what should we visit here? What should we see? What restaurant should we check out? And the people that I remember in all the places we visit are the ones who give us good recommendations, right? Because like yesterday, I was just at the auto parts store, and I talked to probably 6 people looking for one little part, and every one of them I asked the same question. And we're in some little town, and all 5 of the people, I'm like, it's a small town, there's nothing to do. One guy, his name was Chris. I remember his name because I asked him what I should visit, and he goes, you know what? There's a really cool water hole just up the street from where we are called God's Bath. And you should go take your kids there. It's really cool. Only locals know about it. You shouldn't, you should definitely check that out. And he immediately, he's just an auto parts sales guy, but he just ratcheted up the list on people that I'll remember, because he knows a bit about the area. I don't know, it's a powerful thing.
Absolutely. And what's great is, so you talked about it from the perspective of the ownership experience. But this actually works well for the people who already are owners, right? Who already live in the area, who already want this information, because, think about it. How much, actually, this is a really great example. So, anybody watching, I'm sure, last summer, you guys remember how big of a thing Pokemon Go was, right? And it's actually still going. It's still around. It's not nearly as big. But Pokemon Go was this huge thing. And Richard, I remember you specifically, you had mentioned that it was because of Pokemon Go that you discovered this 100-year-old jail or something that existed.
It was a 200-year-old.
And the reality is every single one of us has things like that, right? Like cool things that exist in our city, in our area that we just don't know about because we haven't been exposed to them for whatever reason. And so even the people that already live in your city, you can't make the assumption that they already know about this really amazing restaurant or that they already know about this really cool thing to go and see. Like you can't make that assumption. And the reality is, have already been to a place, even if they've already experienced it. Sometimes it's not about something being new that makes it, worthwhile or powerful to them. Sometimes it's
the confirmation that they're in the cool.
Exactly. It's like, oh yeah, I knew about that place. Yeah, I'm one of the people who already knew about that. So no matter what, there's so many psychological benefits to being that person who brings this information. And so let's talk a little bit about that content and how easy it could be to produce, right? So one of the things that I like to talk about, and Richard and I are actually a really good example of this. So I find it really easy to get on video or to start talking and to create content via a very active vocal process. Whereas Richard's mode of creating content more often writing. If he wants to think something through and really get his thoughts out, we have two different styles of how to proactively create content, and because of that, we have two different styles of where we often create content first. And
I'm usually starting in a mind map, for instance.
Exactly. And so when thinking about how you can go about doing this sort of concept of creating content that's going to actually appeal to people that you can use in your long-term follow-up, all that kind of stuff, I always like to think about it from that perspective. Am I somebody to hop on a camera and do Facebook Lives, that kind of thing, as a way to create content, or am I the kind of camera, but I'm fine to talk? Like if just audios is good enough, and for the way to do that, person who likes writing, then maybe what you do is you start first by writing out some of these ideas. So you always start with a question of essentially. So this is the easiest way to start with this. And here I'm going to go ahead and throw it up on screen too, which is what is something useful or interesting that someone in my location would enjoy to know about, right? So you ask yourself that question, and this could be a restaurant, this could be a business, right? Because one of the things that people are always looking for, they're looking for who are they going to do business with, especially if they're potentially, if they're living in an area, who do you recommend for garden? Who's the best and why? And people will be interested in that less than, but it's still going to be worthwhile, especially for, people. And so you start with that question, and then you just think about what is the best way for me to talk about this? Is it hopping on video? Is it doing a podcast? Is it writing a blog article? And then you just hop on there and you answer that question. Does that process make sense, Richard? Am I missing anything in that discussion? I have some specific tools and whatnot to recommend for different parts of this, but
I would just the structure we use for all of our content. You start with the what. What's something interesting and useful? Why is it interesting and useful? How can you find this place? And maybe even if it's a local business, put their contact information up. Here's how you can get a hold of them. Here's how you can, here's where you can go. If you like, the last bit, if it's a local watering hole, like they were telling me, it's best in the summer. Go check it out this next summer, right? And just follow through that content, and you'll have a really solid structure to follow every time. You don't have to come up with new stuff.
Exactly. And we call that so what is going to be, what you're going to talk about, why it's important, why it matters, why people care about it. Is essentially, the process, like giving them recommendations, giving them how to get there, how to, all that kind of information. Now is like the here's what you do with this information, right? You try this, like if you really want to try out this restaurant, you got to go and try their Sunday brunch. Their Sunday brunch is just killer, right? Like you may like their restaurant for other things too, that's fine, but their Sunday brunch is what you got to do. Like that,
or like
those kinds of
my favorite restaurant in where we left from was a Mexican restaurant. They're a little hole in the wall, and my one recommendation would be avoid Taco Tuesdays. Right, their Taco Tuesdays are great, but they prepare like 2,500 tacos the night before, so they can have lines out the door and around the corner, and their tacos are good. But I'd pay full price for them on Wednesday because it's like 50 cents more instead of waiting 2.5 hours for them.
so start doing Taco Wednesday instead of Taco Tuesday. You pay an extra 50 cents, and you get all the deliciousness and no line.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So those kinds of tips and recommendations where you're sharing information from your own experience. So that's the actual, what are you going to talk about? And again, you could talk about restaurants, you could talk about local businesses, right? Not all of this has to be a super brand new, interesting thing. You will have those, but the goal here is to always know that you have something else that you could talk about, right? To make it easy to start writing a blog post, to make it easy to hop on the mic, to make it easy to hop on camera. You want to have a very long list of potential topics, and then just start going through the topics that you want to cover right then. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And one point I want to make on that is it doesn't have to be an infinitely long list. I mean, you get to point 6 or 12 months out. If you want to re-recommend, I guarantee you everyone on your list forgot you recommended it 6 months ago.
That's true. That's true.
You could re-recommend it.
And that's the other thing too, is say you've recommended a business, but last time you talk about something new they're doing for dinner, it's changed. And instead of lawn care being the thing that people need, they need what's it called? Somebody like clear the driveway or whatnot. I forget. There's actually like a snowblower, right? Yeah, people who do that.
There you go.
Maybe the same business does it.
Southwesterners have no idea what to do with winter.
Yeah, we lived in the Midwest for a while, but apparently it slips away. So anyway, all those kinds of recommendations. Now let's talk about how people can actually make this process easy. Okay, so let's start with video. So right now, a lot of people don't realize this, but Facebook Live. So you have, for instance, you have a lot of different ways of creating video, right? You have you can throw content up onto YouTube. You've got sites like Vimeo. You can broadcast live, and lots of different sites allow you to do that now. There's Facebook allowing you to do it. YouTube. There's Periscope. I wonder if Meerkat still exists. There's Twitch. There's live stream, right? Like there's a ton of these different places where you can actually broadcast live. Instagram has a live thing now, right? So there are all sorts of ways that you can produce video. But one of the things that I really like about right now doing Facebook Lives is this. For one, Facebook's rewarding them. Okay, they tend to get better distribution in Facebook than many other things do. If you take a blog post and you put that up, compare that to the same exact content but delivered via Facebook Live, the Facebook Live will generally get shown way more often, right? Is that what you're seeing too, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. Facebook Live, and there's a very particular reason for that. Video is approaching something like 70% of content consumed on the internet, which is astronomically huge. And it is where all of the big companies are looking to make their money. So Google and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and everyone is fighting over who's going to have the best video platform. And right now, Google has the biggest search engine and Facebook has the biggest social media platform. And both of them are promoting their own video content on their platforms harder than anything else. So if you go to YouTube Live, your YouTube Lives will show up higher in Google search than other content that's older and more established. And same thing on Facebook. Facebook live videos because they're trying to win this battle. So you can, the battle's not going to go on forever. So you can use it to your advantage while it's going on.
Absolutely. But yeah, so it's a great way right now to leverage these platforms. So I specifically, and this is just me, but I like any of the other ones right now because of the level of distribution that they have, because everybody has a Facebook. Like, I mean, it's not everybody, but it's like the same number of people who breathe oxygen. Not really. It's almost everybody has a Facebook page. Whereas not everybody is as proactive on YouTube. Not in terms of audience size, Facebook is the winner here. And you can just bet the amount of weight that they're going to put behind it. They already are. We're already seeing that. And so in terms of getting out there and getting the audience and having people easily be able to share and interact, Facebook is just killing it right now. So in terms of producing this content, how do you do it, right? So what I recommend is you can do Facebook Live from your phone, right? And you can go in and make this just a daily habit. You go in, you try a new restaurant, right? And one thing, like ask them what their specials are, ask them what they're known for, try that thing. And then literally even while you're in the restaurant or while you're in your car, you can be outside, you can just hop on and do a Facebook Live and be able to say, you know, hey, I just got done eating at this place, or hey, I'm eating at this place right now. Look, here's my food. This is what I'm enjoying about it, and just put together some information about that sort of stuff, and be able to say, you know, like, what's the food like? What did you like about it? Do you recommend people try it? Do you recommend they try a specific dish? If you already know the restaurant, then you probably have some more that you can bring to it. If it's a brand new restaurant, the perspective of somebody coming in there new, right? And you can do this literally day after day after day, whether it's a restaurant or a niche bookstore. Yeah, whatever it is, something entertaining, something to do. Hiking trail. That's a great example of something that you could just go out and do, and you'd say, hey, I'm hiking out here at this trail at this park. It's completely free. Here's some of the beautiful views I'm seeing. You know, I'd really recommend if you're an outdoorsy person and you haven't gotten the chance to come out here and do this, I highly recommend it. And you could do that on a Facebook Live. Another way that's really good to do this sort of content is to do this sort of, and I are not in the same location. Richard, are you still in like Northern California somewhere?
I am in Sonoma, California, which is just down the street from where the first gold was discovered.
Okay, well, there you go. So Richard is experiencing his own gold rush right now. But we're not in the same location. We're using a software tool called BeLive.tv in order to do a Facebook Live style interview. But if you're not able to do that, don't let that hold you back. You can literally, you can go and find like a tripod setup that works for your phone. So you get like a little phone mount for a tripod, and you can use your phone and do an interview live in person with a restaurant owner and ask the restaurants, like, why did you get into business? What are some of your favorite dishes? Why do you like them? Why do people like them? What makes you special? And you can have a 5 to 10 minute conversation that people will find interesting, will find useful, and is a great way to be able to create some content with that restaurant owner. And you can do that all live on something like Facebook Live. So I just mentioned BeLive.tv. That's a cool tool that we've been using. But honestly, just getting out there, getting started is a great way to get into the live side of things. Anything else on the live front, Richard, that you'd recommend?
I'll show you a little camera. This one's got a GoPro attached to it, but it's just a little tripod, and it pops open. So you can put your cell phone on it, just get a little cell phone mount on it. I think this was like $10 at Best Buy.
Yeah, and like one of those is going to be like a desktop tripod that you could set on the table. Most of these places are going to have some place where you can like sit behind a desk or something, or have a table. So you don't even have to have like a massive fancy tripod. Just something simple that lets you set it up and start the feed and go live. Now, one of the key things to doing the Facebook Lives, you're going to get better results if you can do it at a consistent time if possible. But if you can't, don't let that hold you up. Just get out there, start doing it, start creating the content, and you can always leverage it out further. But if you are able to kind of put together a consistent schedule, people will more likely start watching those with you.
So I want to make sure people catch the point here too. One of the reasons why you're creating the content on Facebook Live is that it's going to have the additional benefit of being able to increase your audience, right? So you're using Facebook Live as a way to create content to send to your audience, and build an autoresponder for the future. But by creating it on a platform like Facebook Live, when you first do it, you're going to have the added benefit of Facebook's going to show your content to people, and you'll have more people start to join.
Yeah, and the part of the reason why we also specifically talk about reaching out to like restaurants and businesses is that they often already have a customer list. They often already have a group of people that are doing business with them. And if you talk about these businesses positively, favorably, and make them look good, and again, do this honestly, like you have to actually like the businesses. I would never recommend giving a positive review to a business that you don't recommend people, go to. But when you do this, they will often be interested in wanting to share that content as well, right? Because it makes them look good. So they share it back out to their audience. You get some free exposure. You get the ability to, to grow your audience via that specific channel as well. So, now again, Facebook Live, one of the reasons why we like it is because Facebook these people to share it as well. They'll have a post that they can use, that they can share, and do that kind of thing. Now, let's talk about podcasting.
So I want to ask you one quick question on the actual content portion. We talked about the what, why, how, now for like the inside of your content. Do you recommend sandwich that content with some sort of like, here's who I am, why I'm creating this video, and like a call to action where they can, follow up with the agent if they want more information? I recommend doing that on this type of content.
No, I do. So what I would say is you're going to have a couple of different kinds of content that you're going to do on this, calls to action. So first off, you're going to want to have here's what we do on this show. If you want more of this kind of content, I recommend you click follow. I recommend you subscribe to see more of this, because that's going to be the most that's like urgent, a soft call to action. Thing. Yeah, a really soft one. Just get more of this. I do these shows every day. I do this show at this time, this day of the week. That kind of information. So you start to secondary, more hard calls to action are going to be like opt in to get this specific benefit. Like, so as a real estate agent, what I would recommend is you're going to have two different ways of doing this. For one, it could be just a slightly softer thing where it's like, hey, we do this show. I'm actually a local real estate agent. And the reason why I do this show is because I love this city and I love the people in it and I love the businesses in it. And I get questions all the time about the best places to do this. So I put out this show as a result of that. But my primary job where I really, make my impact in the city is I help people buy and sell real estate. So if you are looking to do a real estate transaction in XYZ city, USA, feel free to reach out to me. My phone number is, 555-1234. That's 555-1234. Or you can find me at mywebsite.com. And you could do a call to action like that. And it's still a somewhat soft call to action because you're sort of saying, here's a little bit more context. Here's the background for this. That's somehow how you can see business off of it. The other thing that you can do is you can have a little bit harder call specific. It's going to appeal to less people, but the people that it appeals to will work really readily for. And that would be something like, hey, as a side note, so we were just talking about this business, but right now in the market, we've got something really cool going on. There's this loan program that makes it so that you are able to get into a house potentially with no money down. If you're interested in something like that, give me a call. I'd love to talk you through it and see if this is something that would work for you, if you qualify. It's absolutely no cost for me to go over that information and see if this is a fit. If you want more of that information, call me at 123-456-789. That number again is 123-457-6789. Or you can email me at myname@website.com. And so that's a little bit harder of a call to action. It's not going to appeal to people as readily. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. Like that shouldn't be your only call to action. Yeah, and shouldn't be your only call to action, because most of the people listening will not be interested other than real estate specific content, because most people are not going to be interested in it. But if you have something that's really impressive, really exciting, that you can get people to reach out to you for, then it is a good opportunity to almost like a PS, right? Like, you've talked about the other stuff, you've delivered the value, and now it's just like, a bit of, word from our sponsors.
Okay, one more question on the valuable content. We talked a lot about businesses and places to visit and things to do in the town. What about for those real estate agents that run across a really cool listing that they're doing an open house for? Would it be legit to hop on and do your show this week and be like, hey, I'm sitting in this really cool mansion, we're doing an open house this week, I just want to give you a tour of this house, and have that be their episode for that week? Because I know I like to see the cool houses in my town. I'm not sure if it would fit for this type of content or not, but
it really depends. So I mean, I would just be worried if we recommend it, that people are going to do the same thing that they always do, which is showing the same cookie cutter houses that everybody has, that everybody sees, and that nobody else cares about, right? Like if that's what's going to be going on, then it's not justified. It doesn't make sense. Nobody honestly, the only people who care about your listings are the people who are potentially looking to buy. Like, that's who cares. So you can use them, and they do have their certain place. But if you're going to do content like this, it has to be, like, if you're going to do the listing style content, it needs to be more on par with like MTV Cribs. And I don't mean in terms of like, it doesn't need to be that fully produced, but it needs to be that kind of interesting quality house, right? Like, there has to be something super interesting about it.
In the town I was in, we had 95% of the market was your cookie cutter stamped out houses. And then they had the luxury community up in the hills, and all those houses are like custom and like have stories for everything, all the way down to like where the tile was shipped in from. So if you have one of those listings, that might be worth hopping on and doing a video for. But if you're one of the cookie cutter stamp houses, not really worth it.
Yeah. And even with that, I would still like this type of content. I wouldn't do a show that is wholly houses, even if they're interesting. I wouldn't do a show that way, because more and more people are just like, there's only so many things that you could say about a house that's going to be interesting, and you're going to have a hard, like, if you feel like I'm going to go out and do a show that's just all houses, you're probably going to have a hard time, right? Like, even HGTV, like when they're going through and doing like these shows where they're showing different houses, sure, they're showing different things about the houses. Most of the houses are pretty much the same. The thing that makes it interesting is the story. Is they're helping somebody find the house. They're bringing you into the story of that process. It's not just all houses all the time. It's the stories around the houses. So
the people that are buying them and what they're looking for and how their family's going to fit in and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So you can produce some interesting content using listings and homes and that kind of thing, but it's not going to be. Don't make it all your content. I don't think it'll work well. And really reserve it for those very interesting properties. Don't use it as just another opportunity to promote a listing you just took. Only use it for the homes that are interesting. Now, should you promote the properties that you get as listings? Absolutely. Just it's not the kind of content that I think makes sense for your show.
Follow up in your show. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we covered the content pretty well. We talked about some of the calls to action. We talked about some of what you're going to be doing. So again, we mentioned in terms of this content, you're going to have a few different sorts of things that you could do. If you're going to be like showing like hiking trails and that kind of thing, you're probably not going to have as many places where you can reach out and have them promote it for you. Right? You might, if you do some research, you might be able to find like some hiking groups or that kind of thing, and you might be able to like promote out through something like that. But those ones are going to be more just for the entertaining content. Whereas if you do restaurants and businesses, now you have the ability. These people might actually take and amplify your message for you for free. So it's good to have a blend of these. It would be harder, I think, to grow an audience 100% with just the hiking. You're going to have to really appeal to that specific audience. But hey, if that's your thing, and if you could do that passionately day after day, if you could do it day after day, you're probably still going to build an audience. So there is something to be said about that. Anyway, so let's go ahead and dive into the next part. Let's talk about how to easily podcast. Okay, and so for one thing, it's worth noting, doing these Facebook Lives can actually be an incredibly easy way to start podcasting. So don't think it's like one or the other. You can create this kind of content and then strip out the video and turn them into a podcast as well. But if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to hop onto the video, then you can actually get started very easily.
For those of us who are uninitiated, what's a podcast?
Yeah, so a podcast is very simply, it's like a listen to through your live. It's generally delivered kind of the same way as like a blog, where the content is fed to you an episode at a time. You download it, you listen to it on your phone, or back in the old days, the reason why it's called a podcast is because they were put out for the iPod.
Yeah. What's interesting about that too, it is the only form of audio communication that is growing. And it's not just growing a little bit, it's growing by like 25% a year. And it's becoming rapidly one of the largest consumed pieces of audio content in the world. And there's more and more people that are skipping listening to the radio in their car so they can listen to podcasts in their car on the way to work and traffic and stuff like that. And traditional radio is losing out to the podcast. So it's a big, important aspect of media right now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it has a ton of benefits. One of the benefits being, so like if somebody is reading your blog article, they're probably skipping start to finish. The number of people who actually fully read a blog article is minuscule compared to the number of people who might even be exposed to it. You get one of the same benefits with audio that you do with video, which is that people aren't generally skipping around. They're often listening start to finish. They're either listening to the whole thing or they're not listening to it at all. That's kind of the way that it works. You don't have people like skipping through it. So people get exposed to that whole message, everything that you're talking about through the whole thing. This is both video and podcasting. What's nice about podcasting though, is you actually, when somebody's sitting there and listening to something, that audio, the way that it enters the brain, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't actually know this for sure, but I've heard other people talk about it, and intuitively it made sense to me. But it's almost sits in your brain in the same way that like your own thoughts do. Right, where it passes through, where it doesn't feel like an external thing. It feels like you talking to yourself when you're listening to these podcasts. And so the level of connection that you're able to make with people they get to feel like they really know you. They get to the trust level just goes through the roof. And so it's a really good way to connect with people. Over time, where it starts to become one of these things where you get a podcast listener, and sure, it may not like immediately every episode turns into phone calls, but if you get a podcast listener over a period of time, like you are going to be the only person they consider doing business with, as long as they know that you do real estate. Because
and I have some like evidence of that being true. One of my clients who I no longer work with, but he had both a YouTube channel and a podcast. YouTube channel was generally 5 videos, like these Facebook Live stuff, and his podcast were a little bit longer, more in depth. He did separate content. You could use the same content for both and just strip the audio out. But he did coaching. One of the things that he sold was coaching, and he made the offer to do coaching on both his videos and his audios. He made 90% of his podcast audience, which was a fraction of the size. We're talking maybe a 10th or a 15th. Because the intimacy level of a podcast is just insanely higher. And part of it's, I'm not the scientist either, but when someone is just talking in your head, it's very intimate, and it builds relationships quickly.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they say like in terms of communication that more is conveyed over with body language and whatnot. That like whenever people are talking about this, they talk about like the more interactive that you can kind of make communication, the better if somebody's just listening to you compared to watching you. But yeah, I've kind of seen the same thing. That's not 100% the case. And maybe it's more a matter of exposure, because you may get, you know, in terms of like number of subscribers or whatnot on YouTube, you may have like a few thousand, but in terms of the number of people who are actually watching each and every video, it's like maybe a few hundred, and out of those 100, maybe not all of them are watching all the way through, and you'll very rarely have somebody who will listen to like an hour-long video, whereas hour-long podcasts are not at all uncommon, and because people are listening to them during their commute, right? Like you listen to it
while you're working out, while you're doing chores, while you're washing dishes.
Exactly.
Because
you listen to it
you can do it while doing other things. Because with video, you have to give it your attention.
Right. You have to sit there and
you don't have to give your attention. You can just have it in your head.
Exactly. And so anyway, podcasting is just it's a really great platform to use. But let's talk about how to do it easily, because the reality is, there's a really big reason why most people don't get into podcasting, right? Like knowing how to set up a podcast is like it's a bigger obstacle for a lot of people, right? Because like,
here I can give you the steps. The steps for setting up a podcast are going to iTunes, setting up an iTunes account, figuring out where the show is. Like you go through all these things. You have to know what a podcast feed is. You have to know how to host. By the time you're done, your head hurts.
Yeah, exactly. So normally podcasting is a very complicated thing, but I've got a way that I recently discovered that makes this super, super easy. Now, it has some drawbacks, but I'm the kind of person up is way more powerful than doing something perfectly the first time. And so what this is it's an app. It's called Anchor. And you can actually get this app on your phone. You can get it. It's both for Android and iOS. I think that's all that they have. Here, let me see. Anchor. No, that's an N in there. There we go, Anchor. And so what Anchor, well, let's talk a little bit about what Anchor used to be, just so that people, in case anybody already had experience with, like I did, and I don't know if you did, Richard, but I played with it before it changed into what it is. But Anchor, what it tried to be was almost like, so like they tried to make it like an easy way to put out the equivalent of like a tweet, but it's you talking. And you can engage with people and like create audios back and forth, and like it created this stream of like a conversation. It was an interesting thing, but like I couldn't see anybody really engage. Yeah, I couldn't see big enough people engaging with it because it suffered from the same thing like the network effect has, which is in order for like valuable is because it has the network. It comes from having a network. And so you have to answer some other questions first. Anchor suffered from that problem in terms of there wasn't a something else to me. Like, would it be worthwhile? It had a big network, sure, but it didn't, and they needed to grow it. And so anyway, but now I feel like they've solved that problem. And what they've done is they've changed it from being this social networking platform by itself, which it actually still somewhat is, to being a really easy way to put together a podcast. And so just with your phone, you can pick up your phone and you can like intro your show, you can put together quick segments, and you can stream them together into these episodes, and then very easily select these different aspects of your show. And like it has, so like, like something that kind of leading that sort of transitions from whatever you just said into the next thing, all that kind of stuff. It lets you do sound bed music. So like something that's just there while you're talking, it makes the professional appearance just that much higher. And all of this for free. And then you could select these different clips and turn them into an episode, and that automatically gets added to iTunes, it gets added to the Google Play Store, it gets added to stores, podcast directories like Overcast, and makes it so that from your phone and 100% from your phone, you could produce a really high level podcast. And like it's super simple to do. It's the kind of thing where literally you can, we just talked about the whole restaurant idea. You could go to the restaurant and then like go to your car and just sitting in your car on your phone produce the podcast episode, right? Like you don't have to go to your computer, you don't have to do anything else. You get it 100% from your phone. I've been doing these things on Anchor and producing my own podcast through it, and like being 100% accurate and literal. I think total investment of about a half an hour in terms of creating a podcast. That's creating the content, publishing the content, promoting the content, and I've got a podcast put together. Yeah. With the professional, the 30 minutes, and like literally, I'm doing it here from my home office, but like nothing about what I'm doing couldn't be done from a car, or couldn't be done like while you're out hiking or anything like that. So anyway, Anchor, yeah, it's one of the things that I really recommending right now to make it easy. Now let's first off, anything on that front. What I'm about to get into is some of the downsides. Anything that I'm missing though in talking about this?
Has produced a couple of podcasts in the past. I can tell you that being able to go from start to done, and that includes the promotion and the distribution and having it all up there in 30 minutes, is insane. Right. It's insane. I don't quite know how to, unless you've done it before. That should blow your mind, right. Because producing a podcast the way that we used to do it before tools like Anchor were around involved having fancy recording software. You could use it on your phone still, but you had to have fancy recording software, and then you had to download that recording onto something that you could edit it, and so you could put the bumpers on it and put the things in it and add the sound bed to it, and just taking the recording down and getting on your computer doing the edit would take half an hour. Get it up onto your podcast feed, and then you'd have to promote it and all this stuff. Like getting a short show out, a 5 to 10 minute show on a daily basis would take a couple of hours. Right. Every time. And there wasn't any way to streamline that process. You just had to do it the hard way. Right.
Yeah. So it's amazing. And by the way, I literally, when I say a half an hour, my shows have been really short. I've been doing like these quick tip style shows, which is what I think would make perfect sense in the real estate space. So I'm talking about my total time. So I'm like, if I produce about, I may be putting I'm going to talk about it for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to select the episode, and then I'm going to take that and like promote it out to my social networks. Like that's doing. So that's the benefit is that. So if Anchor only was on its own platform, I wouldn't see it as being a very worthwhile thing. But because Anchor makes it super easy to get out to iTunes and Google Play and these other places that already have a network and already have their own search engines of people searching for content, I think it's a no-brainer. It's a really easy way to get some of this stuff going. So now here's the downside. The downside is, what do we know, Richard? Whenever something is free, what does that mean? If there's a software or service that's free, what does it mean?
To me, it means if I relied my business on it, I would get screwed, because they don't have a profit formula in place. And if I put all of my eggs in that basket, it's going to go away.
It's not in this case. So we're talking about for you to use. So if you are not a customer, if you're not paying for it, it means you're not the customer, you're the product, right? Yeah. So that's what's going on with Anchor. Since it's a free platform, you are their product for one thing. So if it ultimately succeeds, they have a couple of different ways that they can go about this. They can either they can add advertising into your podcast, which you may or may not be in favor of. They might advertising. If that happened, then it becomes clear, that you're the customer, which is what you want essentially. And then the other aspect is if they don't figure out how to become profitable, started with. There is that. Now, great play to get started at your feet, start producing the stuff. You have more of a long-term strategy, but always make sure that you're taking these people and you have a call to action to get them into something that you control, right? Get them onto a list that you control, an email list that you control, that kind of thing, so that if it ever went away, you still have the ability to reach out to these people. So I definitely, I do on any of these platforms, you always want to keep in mind, if it's not your own list, if it's not something that you control where you can reach out to these people, whether or not another company exists or that kind of thing, you're in a dangerous position. But all that being said, right now, I still think Anchor makes sense. I still think it's worthwhile, if only because the benefit of being able to make podcasting easy is just outweighs the risks to me. What do you think about that, Richard?
And honestly, you run into the same risk on every platform, on YouTube and on Facebook, of you're Facebook's customer, or not. You're not their customer. You're their product. They sell you to advertisers, like me and Zach, who advertise people.
Right.
YouTube. And because I know a lot of people who are doing Facebook Lives, they've started doing ads, and right now you don't get to choose whether or not you want to have those ads show up in the middle of you decided they were going to do that like 8 weeks ago. They're just like, hey, all your videos, if they're longer than this long, are going to get an ad in the middle of them. Enjoy. So one of the things that I know that you've talked about a little bit is always take your content off of the platform, even if you're using that platform to create it easily. So if you're using Facebook Live, if you're using YouTube Live, if you're using Anchor to create content, take your content and upload it onto your own website, onto your own blog. Make sure you're getting people onto your own list, because you just have to realize that none of these platforms are yours. So you want to take whatever you produce there and get it onto a platform that is yours. For no other reason than if Facebook decides tomorrow we're not doing video, that's very unlikely, and they shut it all off,
you're still able to reach that audience.
Don't lose the content you create.
Yeah. So get backups of your content. Make sure that you're generating your own audience, your own list, and to continue to control, right? So that means names, emails, phone numbers, addresses, that kind of information, because if you have that, you're able to reach back out to them. Now, those aren't the only ways that you're able to reach people. So some of these other platforms are going to be worthwhile and useful. Just know that, like, you kind of always want to have that, like, if everything went away, do I still have something that, like, I can use to reach out to these people? Can I take my email list and pull it to a new platform if this email platform got shut down? Can you take it with you? That's the question. Can I take the content that I've produced and put it somewhere else? That's kind of the question. Okay, cool. So we talked about podcasting. We talked about Anchor. We talked about Facebook Live. Again, the other thing too, one of the things that we mentioned, if you're using the Facebook Lives, you can strip out the video and use that audio as your podcast as well. It's a bit beyond like exactly how to do that, but do know that's possible. So like if you are good on video, if you want to do video, you can start with a Facebook Live and turn that into a podcast.
What's that? You recommended a service to me the other day that does that for you automatically. Strips the video out of it.
Actually, I haven't used this service yet myself. So if anybody decides to use this, if anybody decides to use the service, just know I haven't used it myself, so I can't make any guarantees. But it was called repurpose.io, I believe, is what it was called. So yeah, and what it'll do is it's supposed to take your video and automatically it'll strip out the video and turn it into a podcast. And same thing, if you do a podcast first, it'll take your podcast and turn it into a what's called a waveform video, and then like upload it to places like YouTube and Facebook and whatnot. So yeah, there's lots of cool ways to take this content, automatically repurpose it and reuse it. So then the last way to kind of create this easy content, and I don't know why we're ending on this one. This one to me is like honestly the least exciting, but hey, it works. Is actually writing these things out. And so if you're going to write them, you generally, you can start wherever you want to write them, but you're going to take them and put them into something like a blog post. Now, do note, actually getting it into something else if you really want to get eyeballs, because written content right now is struggling in terms of distribution. Most of the places aren't sharing it as readily as they share other things. But you can start there. You could start by writing something, and then you could take that and you can turn it into a different kind of media, right? So you can take what you've written and either yourself or hire somebody professionally to record the audio for that. You can take the audio and what you talking through basically what is essentially your blog post. So you can script for, and that could be an easy way to turn something, from that format into a format, whether it be a podcast or a video. It's good. You like playing a recording on the Facebook Live, which you can do. So you could I don't think Be Live does this. Yeah, I'm looking. I don't think they do it easily, but you could use a tool like Ecamm Live. I think there's some other tools that let you play a recording as well. Richard, anything else?
Webinar Jam Session will do that.
Yeah.
But just a couple of things on written content. Written content kind of has a couple of different rules than all the stuff we talked about for content just a minute ago for video and for podcasting. Right. And namely that again, you have to remember the reason you're creating this content is because you're going to share it into social media platforms, hoping to get free distribution, and then you're going to use that content to send it to your audience for long-term follow-up, right? So there's the two aspects of that, and with written content, either way, you're going to be able to have the automatic follow-up and put them into your sequences. But if you want to get the free distribution and Google search engine stuff, that written content that get distributed really well. I know you and I have talked about this before, Zach, but it's the listicle, the recipe, and the case study. So you've seen these all over Facebook. It's like the top 10 things you need to visit in your town before you die. Right? That's a listicle. And it's the top 5 restaurants, the top 5 lawyers in our country, in our county. The top 5 whatever, right? And 5 is just an arbitrary number, but you get the idea. It's just a list of things. Listicles, particularly local listicles for people who are in the area, get shared and distributed really well. That's probably the most powerful of the 3 for the free distribution. The second one, the recipe, is how to do something. So here's how to find the secret, the secret hiking trail or whatever.
So real quick, and I don't know if I'm cutting out or not, but so real quick on the listicle. So keep in mind, like we just talked about in terms of the audio and the video, we talked about a strategy where it's like you could do one restaurant and you can review them. Now you could do that, written as well if you wanted to, but note your written content is going to get shared and spread more readily if you did say a handful of those, if then after that you took those and you crafted them into a top 5 this type of restaurant or top 5 restaurants to visit, because the top 5 one is going to get shared better as a written article than your individual post about a specific business.
So the listicles are going to probably be the easiest ones to do for this type of content. Not sure how well the recipe type stuff would work, but you see these all the time on Facebook and everything. It's the 3 steps to accomplish some goal, 3 steps to get your kids to brush their teeth, right?
Right.
And the only thing I can think of for how do you find this hidden gem or whatever, but it's generally it's a how-to something. And then the last one is a case study, which is how someone got a specific result. And off the top of my head, I can't think of any way you would use that for a local content like this. If I come up with something, I'll maybe stick it in the comments. But I would generally, for written content and this type of content, listicles are going to be really, really fantastic.
Yeah, and so your recipes and your case studies, those are going to work really well if you use them as evergreen content for very specific people. So again, we're talking here about content that will help you attract and kind of stay in front of buyers and sellers. The blog content that works really well to really reveal the people who are ready to buy or sell right now would be those how-tos and those case studies. Like how town would work really well which is kind of a combination recipe and case study, it would work really well as like a follow-up if you specifically know somebody is, interested in buying or selling right now, or in that case, buying. So like that's where that style of content really fits in, is what the person is looking to achieve, and so you're painting a clear picture of how they can achieve that, how they can accomplish that. So it would work well for that. It's not going to be the kind of content that's going to work well it's not going to work well as your podcast that goes out in general. It's not going to work well as your videos that go out, live to a specific audience. It does work well as a video that you kind of reference back to, as a clear place for of local, which is what we're talking about here. Yeah, those last two don't work as well, but the listicles work great.
And if you are not looking for the distribution and you just want to have a good article that you can send out to your list of people, where, like you said, one of the you just mentioned, where you're trying to get someone to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm on your follow-up list and I'm now ready to buy, or I'm now ready to sell. Right. A case study is really, really good for that kind of stuff, where you can come in and say, hey, I just published this thing, buy a house in this city or sell this house in this city. And his last agent had it listed for this, and it didn't sell. We got it to sell for $30,000 over its list price, and we did it in 14 days. Right. If you're looking to sell and you want to have those kind of results, reach out to me. That's the type of content that I know you mentioned. You don't send that out on a daily basis or a weekly basis, but once every every month or so, you stick in one of those pieces of content that is designed specifically to get someone to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm looking to take action right now. Something about my situation has changed and I want to buy or I want to sell. That's when those recipes and those case studies fit in really, really well.
Yeah, in two ways to me. So you can send them out by themselves occasionally. So if you, as long as you're not sending them out all the time, some a little bit more of a hard hitting thing, just know people are going to learn to ignore your emails. So you can send it out to her. You can do what I would call like the PS method, right? That you're looking for. PS, I just did this really cool thing. If this is something that happens to interest you, reach out to me. And so you can send it as along with your entertainment. And the people who that appeals to, will see it kind of as the PS. So that those are the ways where that makes sense. But yeah, in terms of your actual like day after day after day content, they don't perform well there. They perform well as a sandwiched in amongst entertainment.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So that was pretty much the extent of what I was thinking about covering. So let's talk a bit about what we have covered. Richard, if you notice anything that I've missed in this process, then feel free. We could dive into that too. But we talked a bit about what kind of content makes sense in a long-term follow-up situation where somebody's either done business with you in the past, or you say haven't been able to get in contact with them quick enough to really know if they're still in the market. This is the kind of content that you can do to build an audience, to stay in front of people, so that we know every 3 to 5 years somebody does a real estate transaction, how you can follow up with people over that really long period of time, and let them know that you're a real estate agent without doing so in a way that pisses them off. And again, the way that we're recommending doing that is with this really local centered content, which is restaurants, entertainment, things to do, great parks, great hikes, basically everything in and around living in your city. And we didn't talk about this. What I would recommend, focus largely on the things that you do know, if possible. Focus largely on the things that you enjoy personally. You will more likely attract the kind of people who will like working with you if you focus on the things that you're already passionate about. If you're the kind of person who's out going to restaurants all the time, talk about the restaurants. If you're the kind of person who's out hiking all the time, talk about the hiking, right? Like you don't have to necessarily go out and do something brand new in order to make this work. Talk about the things that you already know and that you're already passionate about, and you will attract people who are interested and passionate about those same things as well, which will likely be the kind of people
In the same vein, like every real estate agent I know is in some sort of lead group, like BNI or some of the other ones I can't remember the names of right now. every person in that group is ripe for doing an interview with for your show.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, hop in and be like, hey, I want to do an interview with you, and just let my audience know about what you do.
Right.
And so, just keep your mind open for things like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the kind of content. Now, the key to this is that we're looking for content that will be interesting and engaging, right? We're looking for letting people discover things that they may not have otherwise known. So you want to be, honestly, you want to be a little bit careful. If you're doing only business interviews, people may or may not be interested in that. You want to make sure, you want to think about who is your market, what are the kinds of things that they'd be interested in, and ask yourself that. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to share, is that something that they'd be interested in? And it doesn't have to be that, directly real estate related. Just, would this be something that they'd find interesting? It's okay if not everything is like game-changing interesting. You just have to ask, is this somebody who lives in my area, would they be interested to know, a really good lawyer, right? Is that something that they would find useful? It's not going to be the kind of content that you're going to be able to do like a long time on. Go ahead.
I like to keep in mind what I call the 3 E's. I think I got this from Tony Robbins. But when you're creating content, it's educate, empower, entertain, right? So you want to educate them about your local market. You want to empower them to go and see and do things and have connections that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And you want to entertain them while you're doing it. And if you can hit those 3 things, you'll build an audience.
Yeah, and if you, in this case, for this style of content, so really, like, you can pull from these, right? Your goal is as often as possible to be entertaining. If you can't be entertaining, try and be educational. And if you can't be those things, try and be empowering. And either way, you kind of stack these things together. The more of them you have, the better. If something's educational, entertaining, and empowering, it's going to be more powerful than if it was just one or the other of these. But your goal is to have at least one. Yeah, exactly. And so we talked about, that's the kind of content, right? And the reason why is because people on average are not, thinking about doing a real estate transaction through that whole 3 to 5 year process. There's a period of time where they're actually interested in real estate. And so we use this as our way to stay in front of people long term. And so some of the ways that you can do that, you can do exactly what Richard and I are doing right now with a Facebook Live. You can do that from your phone, do that like while you're in a restaurant, while you're at a store, while you're on a hike. Interview people, both of you on the camera at the same time. And Facebook Live then allows you to take that video and like republish it on something like YouTube. Some platforms, even like the more advanced you get into it in the long run, you can even like simultaneously live broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, all of that stuff. But just starting out, we really like Facebook right now. So you can do the videos, you can do the live, you could do audio, and you can do you can use Anchor as the app that we recommended that really makes that easy and simple and quick to get into. You may outgrow it, you may decide that you want to do different things in the long run, but it's a great place to get started. And then finally, we talked about writing, starting from writing first, and how you can assemble this information into something that people will potentially share. And all of this content can be cool. So you can take your written words and record audio of that written word, take that audio, put it together with slides, and now you've got a video. You can take your videos, get those, strip out the video, and now you've got the audio for a podcast. You can take that audio, get that transcribed, and now you can actually turn that into a blog post. And same thing with your audio, you can get that transcribed and put together with a video. You can take that transcription and turn it into a blog post. So all the different types of content can become, whatever you need them to be. But the key is to start with whatever is easiest for you to get going with, wherever you feel most comfortable, so that you don't have the excuses to not get started. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to cover. That's what we got going on for you. One thing I do have for you guys, I didn't mention this at the beginning of this. I just wanted to hop in straight to the content. But I have a free gift that you guys can get called Ultimate Lead Machine. And I normally set up a thing so you can drop a comment. I didn't get that set up for this one this time. But if you guys want Ultimate Lead Machine, it's really easy for you to get. All you got to do is text lead tips, and I'm going to go ahead and write that out here. Lead tips to 444-999. So that's lead tips to 444-999. What Ultimate Lead Machine is it's my framework that I've put together that talks about, once you've generated the lead, what do you do after there? Right? Like, so we just talked about a really good strategy for that long-term follow-up process, but this talks about what does the short-term follow-up process look like, right? Like if you get a lead that mentioned that they're looking to buy a house, right? You're not going to send them to the information about what's going on in the community as your first way of contacting them. You're going to talk to them very specifically about buying a house first. So we talk about everything that's involved in that process, what to do when somebody first becomes a lead, how you follow up with them, what to do if you can't get in contact with them, what to do if you can get in contact, but they're way how long before they're planning on doing business. So we cover that whole thing. We teach you exactly A to B, what that process looks like, how every lead should be processed, no matter what state they end up being in. And we put together that course completely free for you. You can get that by texting lead tips. That's LEADTIPS, one word, to 444-999, and we'll send you back instructions on how you can get access to that. So that is the show. Richard,
Absolutely.
thank you for
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for anybody who watched this, whether live or watching the replay. Again, if you're watching this after the fact, drop us a comment. Let us know if you have any questions. We'd be glad to get those answered for you. And otherwise, we're doing these at 2 p.m. Pacific time right now, Monday through Friday, unless we happen to accidentally miss a day. But Monday through Friday, we're gonna have great content for you. Not really going to be as long as this one was. To be necessarily, depending on the people we're bringing on too. So come back and we'll have good information for you Monday. Thanks again, and see you guys on the next one.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Growth Hacker Show. Remember, done is better than perfect. To turn the marketing ideas and tactics you just learned into real growth for your real estate business, visit us at realestategrowthhackers.com. If you like this episode, consider sharing it with another real estate professional who could benefit from the information, or maybe you'd like to subscribe to the show to never miss an episode. You can leave a rating or review on iTunes with your biggest takeaway, helping this show to reach and help more people just like you. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.